Hey guys, welcome back to Mr. Donnell's Social 9 podcast. We are on Chapter 8. We are almost done. So to what extent should Canadians support social programs and taxation? So Chapter 8 is mostly about learning about different, how taxes work, specifically towards social programs, thinking healthcare, and things like that. If you're following along in the textbook, I'm on page 266. Think about the last time you visited the doctor. Who paid for the visit? If you required x-rays, who paid for those? In a way, social programs like healthcare are free, but not really. You might not realize it, but the free public healthcare government provides for people in Canada comes from the taxes that citizens pay to the government. It also comes from decisions the government makes on how to use taxes to benefit everybody. These decisions affect quality of life for you and others. In this chapter, we will explore the underlying values of economic policies related to social programs in Canada and the US. As you work through this chapter, consider how political and economic decision-making can affect people's quality of life. Also, consider the views and perspectives you encounter. Think about what you believe people in Canada should most value as a society, and how decisions about social programs and taxation can reflect these values. So on page 266 there, the definition of social programs are services provided by the government to reduce economic inequalities and promote the well-being of citizens. So in Canada, for example, think of our healthcare system. I'm now going to page 270. If you're looking at the picture on the slides here, you got some different social programs, things that we have. So social services, food hampers, support for senior citizens. So on page 270, we got how do decisions about social programs and taxation in Canada and the US attempt to meet the needs of citizens. So two first world neighboring countries, vastly different ways we use our taxes. So for example, on page 270, you got on March 14th, 2007, Liberal leader, this is at the time, Liberal leader, gives a speech about proposing to fight crime by providing more money to hire police officers. Stephen Harper said, announces funding to provide medical alert bracelets to every school-aged child with a medical condition. So on page 271, we got what are social programs? Social programs are services provided by the government and paid for by taxes. They aim to reduce the economic inequalities in society and promote the well-being of all citizens. Views differ on what programs might count as social programs. The list can include healthcare, pensions for senior citizens, income assistance, employment insurance, childcare, and other programs administered or supported by government. This chapter focuses on three key program areas: healthcare, pensions for senior citizens, and income assistance. The decision by a government to provide or not provide social programs comes from different economic philosophies and different values. In Canada, governments generally support the idea of using taxes to provide services to citizens. In the US, governments support this idea less so. Let's look at an example. Healthcare. So we're going to read a comic on the next slide here, or the next page here. Read the comic on the next page. It says, the comic describes how paying for healthcare can differ in the Canadian and the US healthcare systems. Canada has public healthcare. This means that public funds, taxes, pay for it. The US has private healthcare. This means individual citizens cover the cost of their own medical needs. It also means that healthcare is more like a business where people can offer health services to make a profit. In the US, many people buy health insurance to cover the costs of care. They pay money to a company on a regular basis, whether they are sick or not. If they become sick, the insurance company covers their medical costs. For many Americans, health insurance like healthcare costs more than they can afford. So the comic, which I got right here, first I'll read this for you. The difference is, again, you got two healthcare systems, Canada and the US. So Canada, public, okay, publicly funded, that means paid for by taxes. Okay, there are some issues. Problems would be long wait times for critical procedures, high costs, and then taxes. Excuse me. The U.S. private health care, the individuals cover their own health costs. Most pay for an insurance. Okay, just like how you pay for car insurance, whether or not you get in an accident or not, you're paying a monthly fee anyways. Problems, rising costs, and people with no health insurance. So you got an example here, if you can see it. On the left there, you got the public health care way. I think you've broken your arm. Let's get you to emergency. Ouch. Almost done. Later, it's time to pay. And then all you see here is it's just by taxes. Okay. On the right here, you got the private health care way. My arm, I think it's broken. Yep, let's go, son. It's broken, all right. Yep, broken. Yep, broke. Later, it's time to pay. And you go to the hospital for doctor's fee, x-ray, anesthetic, cast. So you're paying as an individual instead. Okay? Just something to think about. What are your opinions on this? There's always two sides. We'll talk about this in our class discussion as well. Page 273, we got a snapshot of social programs in Canada in 2007. So Canada has provided a different array of social programs at different points in its history. For example, in 1971, Canada had an employment insurance program supported by taxes, which provided financial assistance to people who lost their jobs. In 2007, Canada's government still administered an employment insurance program, but it did not support the program with taxes. The following chart shows the key social programs in Canada in 2007. So if you're looking at page 273, that's where you'll see where you will see that, which it's actually right here. So we'll go back later for the other ones. But again, so what is provided? Looking at healthcare first. All citizens receive basic healthcare from a system paid for by taxes. The federal and provincial governments fund Canada's healthcare system. How is it provided? With the provisions of the Canada Health Act. You can see page 274 if you want more information. Each province decide what services are paid for by taxes. So certain provinces can offer more because and they can raise taxes to offer more. And what legislation is involved? The Canada Health Act. Next one, you got pensions for senior citizens. At age 65, all citizens who have lived in Canada for at least 10 years automatically qualify for a monthly pension paid for by taxes. How is it provided? The federal government funds and provides the pensions, and it's called the Old Age Security Act. And last one there, you got income assistance. In general, citizens who are unable to meet their basic needs for food, clothing, and shelter receive assistance, paid for by taxes. The eligibility rules vary from province to province. How is it provided? The federal and provincial governments fund this program. Each province sets criteria for who is eligible to receive income assistance. Each province has its own legislation. And so if you look at the U.S., take that in a second. So also on page 274, you got government responsibilities and social programs in Canada. Different levels of government provide and fund social programs in Canada. This is because under Canada's Constitution, the federal and provincial governments have different responsibilities. For example, under Canada's Constitution, the provinces have a responsibility for health care. This ensures citizens in different provinces can have a role in shaping healthcare to fit their unique views, perspectives, and needs. The federal government has a responsibility for peace, order, and good government. It can pass laws such as the Canada Health Act that affect the way the provinces carry out their responsibilities. Did you know? The Canada Health Act is a federal law that sets out 5 principles for health care in Canada. The Act says that in every province and territory, health care must be 1. Publicly administered, run by government for no profit, comprehensive, for care provided by hospitals, physicians, and surgeons. 3. Universal, available to anyone. 4. Portable, available everywhere in Canada, no matter where you make your home in Canada. And 5, accessible, available within reasonable time and distance. These principles apply to services provided by hospitals, physicians, and surgeons. They do not apply to other healthcare services such as dental care and eye care. Page 275, you got the U.S. So same 3 things we're analyzing, but how the U.S. does it. So healthcare. Citizens with low income receive health care paid for by taxes. All other citizens pay for health services or health insurance personally. In 2007, about 15% of people in the U.S. did not have health insurance, and some could not afford medical care. How is it provided? The federal government funds and provides all assistance available. And what legislation is involved? Social Security Act. Pension for senior citizens. Senior citizens generally support themselves through personal savings and pension plans. So no legislation at all for senior citizens. They have to save up their own money. And income assistance. In general, citizens unable to meet their basic needs receive assistance paid for by taxes. The federal and state government fund income assistance, and both levels of government are involved in setting criteria for who is eligible to receive income assistance. It's called the Social Security Act again. Each state also has its own individual legislation. On page 276 now. So healthcare as a social program, yes or no? This would be an interesting debate that we'll have in our class tomorrow, our next class. But this page and page 277 present different views about providing healthcare as a social program. Read the views carefully and compare them. In what ways are they similar and different? So on the first one there, if you know who that is, that's George Bush. So I'll read the 4 for you. You kind of judge for your own opinion. This is the first one on the top left. In his State of the Union address today, President George Bush outlined his plans to improve the U.S. healthcare system. The president identified 2 key problems with the American system. 1, rising costs. He proposes to reduce costs by computerizing health records and eliminating wasteful lawsuits against doctors. 2, the number of Americans without health insurance. He said he wants to make private insurance more affordable so that Americans can choose and afford private health care, coverage that best fits their individual needs. He rejected the idea of increasing the role of government in providing health care, saying we will preserve the system of private medicine that makes America's health care the best in the world. That's their argument for the benefits of the U.S. system. Underneath that, you got Canadian healthcare needs innovation. In the speech from the throne today, Canada's Conservative government promised changes to the healthcare system. Canadians have paid their taxes to support our system of public health insurance, but all too often they find themselves waiting too long for critical procedures. That is not good enough. It is time Canadians received the health care they paid for. The government said that healthcare needs innovation to reduce wait times and bring down overall costs. Any innovations, however, have to be consistent with the principles of a universally accessible and equitable public healthcare system embodied in the Healthcare Act. Top right. The trouble with public healthcare. Calgary. Public healthcare is becoming unaffordable. According to a report just released by the Fraser Institute, a market-oriented research organization. The report warns that Canadians can expect to pay more in taxes as governments attempt to cover spiraling healthcare costs. In a separate report released in October, the Fraser Institute said Canadians were waiting longer than ever for medical attention, despite billions of dollars in government funding. Some critics suggest that the government funding leads to inefficiencies, such as high costs and long wait times. They say making healthcare more into a business, like any other, would improve the system. Healthcare providers would then compete for patients and profits, creating an incentive to provide the best care at the lowest price. Okay, so changing healthcare to a business. And the last one there, profit is not the cure. Advocacy groups. The Canadian Healthcare Coalition and the Council of Canadians say Canadians need to speak out in support of public healthcare. The promoters of for-profit healthcare have been doing their best to convince people that the only way to improve Canada's healthcare system is to open it to the private for-profit interests. The Canadian Health Coalition calls healthcare a public good that should not be subject to privatization. Both groups say problems with wait times can be fixed with the public system by establishing better communication and coordination among hospitals. Interesting. So four different viewpoints. The two on the right there, very, very, very opposite. So before I read this comic here, what's the connection between taxation and social programs? Governments collect taxes to pay for the services it provides to citizens, such as social programs. In Canada, both the federal and provincial governments collect taxes. The federal government transfers some of the taxes it collects to the provinces. For social programs, these transfers include the Canada Health Transfer and the Canada Social Transfer. Individual Canadian citizens pay two kinds of tax to the federal government and to their provincial government: income tax and sales tax. I'm on page 281, by the way. Income tax is based on what you earn. The more money you earn, the more tax you pay. Sales tax are based on what you spend on products and services. The more you spend, the more tax you pay. The Federal Goods and Services Tax, GST, is a sales tax that everybody in Canada pays. Okay? Did you know? Grade 9 students pay taxes too. When you buy items such as, this is an older book, when you buy items such as CDs, you pay the GST. The federal government collects the tax you pay from the store where you shop, and the tax becomes part of the money available to pay for social programs. In Alberta, the GST is the only tax you have to pay when you buy something. In other provinces of Canada, you would also pay a provincial sales tax. Grade 9 students working part-time jobs generally don't pay income tax because there is a minimum amount you need to earn before you are taxed. In 2005, Canadian families paid on average 17% of their income on taxes. For example, if your family earned $67,000, the median income for families in 2005, your family would have paid about $11,000 in taxes. Again, more to debate when we have this discussion in class. So every other province right now, and we could say the pros and cons, every other province besides Alberta pays a provincial sales tax, PST. So they get double taxed. If you buy a CD, you're paying your GST to the federal government and your PST. In Alberta, you do not pay a PST. It's amazing. People in Alberta are like, oh yeah, we pay less tax, great. There are cons to it though as well. So again, we already went through these, right? Yeah, I already read this. So again, taxation, income tax based on a percentage of a person's income. The more money you make, the more tax you pay. Sales tax paid on an item purchased. It's 5% in Canada. An example would be tax evasion as well, is misrepresenting what you earn to avoid paying taxes. That is very illegal. So if you're on, perfect, page 282. What are some, this is in 2007, by the way. It fluctuates. So what do taxes pay for in Canada? It says examine the charts on the next two slides here, or on page 282, just to see what sort of things, what does the federal government use taxes for versus what does Alberta use taxes for. So I'm not going to, you can kind of look at that yourself. The biggest one being there, you got social services. This is by the government, by the way, the federal government. So what are the biggest things? 32% social services, and you got 12% protection of pensions and property, paying back loans, healthcare, etc. And here's Alberta. 33% on healthcare, 15% social services, 25% education. So you can see it's quite quite different actually between the government and Alberta. An underground economy. Some of you might have heard of this before. Movies or the black market. People who work without paying taxes are part of the underground, to the term being paid under the table is the same thing. No taxes being paid equals less money in social programs. So The less money the government has in taxes from people, the less stuff it can provide. Healthcare, road repair, anything the government pays for, essentially. So technically, if you cut lawns for cash, technically you're part of the black market. Although, if you're a kid, not really. I'm on page 283 right now. So what is a taxation model? A taxation model is a policy about taxation that describes what to tax, how much to tax, and how to spend taxes. How do taxation models reflect values? So examine the flow chart below on page 283. Yeah. So jobs and income, individuals, taxes, government. How does paying or not paying taxes affect social programs and quality of life? The chart on page 282 shows that social programs represent a large part of government spending in Canada. Canada's federal and provincial governments collect taxes to make that spending possible. This page and page 284 and 285, so I'll be there in a second, explore the issues of tax evasion. Tax evasion means avoiding paying taxes. It's against the law. In all countries, including Canada, it's against the law to avoid paying taxes. Canadians must report what they earn so government can determine and collect the taxes they owe. The economic activity that governments tax is called the tax base. The tax base pays for the services provided by government, such as social programs. Tax evasion involves not reporting your economic activity so government cannot collect the taxes you owe. People who work without paying taxes are part of the underground economy. Underground because it functions in secret from the government. The underground economy is also called the black market. Here's an example here, a taxing case. I'll just read it for you guys. Sure, I can cut down this tree for you. It's a big job though, costs you about $300. And I work cash, strictly cash, okay? Working for cash on weekends is good money. I could collect the GSI as part of my fees, but I don't. I could report my fees as income, but I don't. I make sure the government doesn't know I've got the cash. It's tax-free. More money for me. Okay, but you can think about the issues that could cause. Page 285. It's called the economic excavator. Dear readers, a few weeks ago, I asked readers to write in with responses to a letter. Here's the letter again with 2 of your responses. Dear Mr. Equity, a woman came to my door last week offering to do work around the yard. It offended me slightly that she thought my yard needed work, but that's not why I'm writing. The woman explained that she could help with all sorts of things I apparently need, like mowing the lawn and pulling weeds. She said she knew how to make my car not say wash me anymore. Then she explained that she could save me a lot of money. I would have to pay her cash though, so she could avoid paying taxes. That's how she could work for cheap. I could use the help, I guess, and I like saving money. Should I hire her? Dear Mr. Equity, no one should hire people who don't pay taxes. These people make health care and schools more expensive for all of us. If people paid their taxes, their fair share, everybody's taxes would be lower. Everybody's would have less to pay. Taxes are a privilege. They're a badge of citizenship, a contribution we make to our own society and to each other. Let's remember, Canada is a great place to live, and our taxes help make it that way. That's number 2. Number 3, dear Mr. Equity, taxes are a burden. They are too high, and they force people to work in the underground economy. Taxes are too high because they provide services to everyone, people who get sick from smoking, for example, or who drive unsafely and end up in car accidents. Why should I pay for their bad judgment? And if I don't have children, why should I pay for schools? I say people should pay for their services they use. They buy their own groceries, they should buy their own education and healthcare too. Interesting points of view that we could debate. Page 286. What values shape the economic policies and political parties on social programs? So just looking at how even though, yes, we're in Canada, how do the different political views of the different parties, how do they affect taxes and social programs? Okay, if you're looking at the screen right now, it's a did you know? Many call Tom Lee Douglas the father of of Canada's healthcare system. So he was also nominated as the greatest Canadian ever. So he's the reason why we have free healthcare as we do today. All old leaders, by the way. Obviously, just Justin Trudeau is the leader of the Liberal Party now, and is the I got to replace these pictures. Jack Layton died, actually. He was the leader of the NDP party. Stephen Harper's also retired, former prime minister. But the issues are, for the most part, the same. So, page 287. A political platform describes the official policies of a political party. It reflects a variety of issues, including those linked to social programs and taxation models. Political parties create platforms to reflect the values of their members. Parties also consult constituents in electoral ridings to learn more about issues that concern voters. Parties add and remove policies as issues become more or less important to their members and to voters. Issues can change in response to local, national, and world events. So I'm not going to go through these all. You can take a look at it yourself and see just like what are some of the key issues the different political parties think about. That's on page 287 as well, by the way. In the U.S., they only have two parties, Democratic and Republican Party. Again, take a look at yourself. What are some of the issues platforms that they stand on? It doesn't mean they believe like they care about the same issues. How they deal with those issues could vary. On page 288, we got the idea of what's the connection between values, policies, and the economic continuum. Remember, shift left, shift right. Economic policies come from values and form the part of the platform of political parties. The policies within platforms indicate where parties fit on the economic continuum. On page 288, there's an example of where they think the parties would be. And on page 289, what are some examples of political parties and their economic policies connected to social programs? Page 289 and page 290 talk about some of the different beliefs of the different political parties. I'll read so for Bloc Québécois, supports accessible health care for all citizens. I'm not going to read all of it because you can read it on your own. Page 289, the Conservative Party is improving Canada's healthcare system to build a stronger, safer, better Canada. For example, Canada's Conservatives have provided $612 million in new funding to help provinces reduce patient wait times. They also believe Canadians pay too much tax. They're cutting taxes to build a better Canada. So they have cut, in the past, they have cut GST from 7% to 6% to now 5%. Green Party of Canada would take steps towards a guaranteed livable income. A GLI could eliminate poverty. It would provide a regular annual payment to every Canadian without regard to need and set at a bare subsistence level. A GLI would be a general income for all, which means every single Canadian would get basically money from the government to make sure everyone at least was could provide the basic needs. This is a did you know? Did you know that grade 9 students can join political parties? You have to live in Canada, be at least 14 years old, endorse the principles of the party, which is pretty neat. And there's an example on page 294. It says, I joined a political party because I want to drive the future. We are living in the most exciting times with tremendous opportunities to change what Canada is. Looking back on this time in the future, I'd be embarrassed to tell my children and grandchildren that I wasn't involved. I think social programs are absolutely crucial to Canadian society. They are what get me excited about this country and why I'm involved in politics. I believe in creating a society that's fair to everyone. That's an ideal. Hard to achieve, but social programs can get us closer. They can help us solve pressing problems like urban poverty and the injustices Aboriginal people face. Young people can have a big impact on the platforms of political parties, especially if they work together. Platforms get built in working groups and forums on different issues, like the environment or justice for Aboriginal people. And youth issues, too. You can join these groups and have your say. You can vote. I attended the 2006 Liberal Leadership Convention. The highlight for me was the enormous excitement. The speeches, some of them just made you want to run outside and start fighting an election. There's a crazy amount of idealism, and it's really refreshing. I really want you to take a look at that, like what we had before there on page 289 and 290, and just take a look at the different political parties Canada has, and which ones do you kind of agree with the most. That is it for Chapter 8. It's quite a bit there. Thanks a lot. See you next time.